Soundstripe.
Hey y'all, it's your friendly neighborhood therapist, and it is Friendly Neighborhood Therapist Friday over at the Clinical Cookout. So today is my turn to kind of wrap up our themed week, and this week we were talking about Black people don't do that. So I'm giving y'all a 2-for-1 again, just like I did last Friday, and today is gonna be just let's get into it. All right, so first is something regarding the LGBTQ community. Now I know I can hear y'all already. Auntie Ashley, we know it's gay Black people. We know it's Black people in the LGBTQ community. That's not a Black people don't thing. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is I've heard so many people throughout the years say, well, but it's not natural to us. Our ancestors were not gay. They did not practice in homosexuality and same sex relationships or love. That was brought to them by the colonizers, the Romans, the Greeks. It was brought over to them. They were not doing that before. All right. And then number 2, the church. And I can hear y'all now. Girl, Black people are the most churched people in America. We are the most religious group. And statistically, you are correct, we are. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Black people ain't atheists. Black people not agnostic. Something must have happened to them because all Black people can be is Christian or Muslim. And Muslim is a stretch. So we don't believe people can be anything else. And oftentimes, these two particular topics lead to a lot of hate and judgment. So I'm here to talk about it. Let's get into it. All right, so let's jump into the first thing, which is LGBTQ, the idea of homosexuality somehow being unnatural to Black people because it is unnatural to African people as a whole, or it was never on the continent of Africa before colonization. So, first, I want y'all to consider something. A lot of the very people who say that it was not on the continent before colonization, these are the very same people who say that everything started with Mother Africa. Science teaches us about the Eve gene. So, if everything started with us, it can't just be everything except the things you want to accept. And I also want you to consider that Africa is an entire continent with a lot of countries, meaning it is made up of thousands of ethnic groups with rich, diverse cultures and sexualities. It would be asinine to think that a continent with that many ethnic groups, somehow nowhere in that continent did homosexuality exist before white people came over there. Now to the facts. So African history is replete with examples of both erotic and non-erotic same-sex relationships. Now, I'm going to be going back and forth on my notes here because I want to make sure that I'm saying things accurately. And if I mispronounce something, please forgive me or correct me in the comments and tell me the correct pronunciation. So, example, ancient cave paintings of the San people in Zimbabwe depict 2 men engaged in some form of ritual sex. Then, during pre-colonial times, the Muduku Daku, or effeminate males among the Langi of northern Uganda, were treated as women and could marry men. In Buganda, one of the largest traditional kingdoms in Uganda, it was an open secret that Kabaka King Mwanga II, who ruled in the latter half of the 19th century, was gay. Then, the actual vocabulary used to describe same sex relations in traditional languages, which predate colonialism, is further proof of the existence of such relations in pre colonial Africa. All right, so just based off of those few facts, and there are a plethora more that you could find, but just based off the few I just said, it is quite clear that it is not homosexuality that is un-African or something that our people or our ancestors didn't do or don't do. It's the criminalization of it, of such relations, that has become the issue. And then, segueing right into the next thing, equally alien to the continent are the Abrahamic religions, particularly Christianity and Islam. So, Christianity and Islam often accompany and augment the un-African arguments against homosexuality. But ATRs, or African traditional religions, were and still are integrated into the people's holistic and everyday existence, and it was intricately tied to their culture to include sexuality. But with the new religions, many sexual practices that were once acceptable in pre colonial, pre Islamic, and pre Christian Africa were encoded with tags of deviant, illegitimate, and criminal through the process of proselytization and acculturation. And before anybody hops on here to tell me that Christianity was in Africa, yes, Eastern Africa. Where did our ancestors come from for the most part? Western Africa. Y'all can do your own research on that. That's a whole nother subject matter, but just to let you know, Now, going straight into part two, because of this, Black people are not atheists. Black people are not agnostic. Black people are not anything except Christian or Muslim. And like I said, even that one's a stretch sometimes. But clearly, that's not true. We know that people have a plethora of different belief systems. And the reason why I wanted to touch on this is because it becomes problematic when we try to force people to believe what we believe. It's one thing to spread what you believe or offer it to someone. It's a whole nother thing to force it on them. That's not your job. So there are Black people who believe differently than you. And it is not always because of church hurt or religious trauma or something bad happening to them in those spaces. Sometimes it's just them walking their own path. And that has got to be okay. We cannot judge that. So basically, sometimes atheism and various other beliefs or lack of are seen as a whites only thing, whites only club. African American history, slavery, and the civil rights movement are all closely tied to Christianity. So religion has very much become part of the tradition of Black history and culture. And even when there is strong atheist or secular humanist movement in the African diaspora, it's basically been ignored. In surveys of history, Black expressions of humanism and secularism have been ignored by historians, so it is not well documented. And the reason why I bring this up, I know some people might be listening to the things that I'm bringing today, like, well, what does this have to do with mental health? A lot, because this is another area when we're talking about sexuality and religion. These are two areas where Black people are not given the space to just be who they are. And it leads to judgment, it leads to discrimination among our own people. And that leads to anxiety, depression, suicide, all kinds of things. So it ties into mental health, both of these things. You are judging, it leads to judgment. And as much as we like to say, no, it's correction and love. It's this, it's that, it's judgment. These are things that are innate to people. Your belief system and your sexuality, those are core things. Those are core things. So you are telling people at their core they are incorrect or they are wrong or they are not enough. That will destroy someone's mental well-being. It's difficult, if not impossible, to divorce religion from Black culture. And the social cost is not unique to Blacks who leave Christianity, but also occurs among Black Muslims who leave the religion. Sometimes people who decide to leave religion are shunned by their family. There's fear of being ostracized and demonized. So for this reason, you don't hear it a lot, which is why you tend to think Black people don't do that. At the end of the day, it's not up to you or me to judge those people. Let people live and love people. That's what we're really supposed to do, is just love people. And do you know how much loving people could just help their mental health? Loving someone can do much more than trying to tell them what to do or tell them what's right or tell them what they should be doing. Y'all know how I feel about should. Just love people. That's it. To provide y'all with a list of well-known and more famous Black African-American atheists that you will know when you hear their name. James Baldwin, W.E.B. Du Bois, Lorraine Hansberry, A. Philip Randolph, Carter G. Woodson, Richard Wright, Langston Hughes, Frederick Douglass, Huey P. Newton, Alice Walker, Zora Neale Hurston, Claude McKay. So see, some of our most prominent historical Black figures were in fact atheists, and ironically, they marched right alongside Christians for our freedom and our civil rights. So they knew how to unify regardless of a difference of religious or lack thereof beliefs. So that's all I wanted to bring to y'all today. Black people do atheism. Black people do historically do homosexuality. It's not foreign to us. So hope y'all enjoyed that lesson, and I hope y'all join us next week for our next theme. See y'all then.
Soundstripe.